I saw my friend Christy Horn recently and immediately knew I should relaunch this podcast episode I did with her called I Believe I Can Fly. This was released in April 2022, so a year and a half has passed. Many listened to that episode and were inspired by her story. Just in case you missed it, here it is again. If you did not miss it, this is definitely an episode worth repeating. This is an inspiring story of someone who chose to keep going when her world collapsed around her. If you're thinking about giving up, you need to listen to this. If you know someone who needs encouraging, please pass this link along. I am absolutely sure of this. Christy Horn is a special lady. I'll provide some updates to this story at the end of this podcast.
Viewing life from a hearse, it could be worse. Laugh, think, and cry with the country undertaker.
When I wrote the story of Euland Brown, I could have told a very similar story of others I have known in my life. Euland had a muscular disease. He delivered grit papers on his bicycle and often found himself in the ditch with his papers strewn all around because he could not keep his balance on his bike. As a little boy, Euland got my attention, not because he was in the ditch, but because he refused to feel sorry for himself and he refused to continue lying in the ditch. My mental picture of Euland is of him squatting down, gathering his papers together, getting them back in the basket so he could get on down the road. He absolutely refused to quit. He refused to give up. I thought about Euland 10,000 times in my life till I finally wrote a book about it. I learned that I would find myself in the ditch in my life, and I would always have two choices. I could lie in the ditch, feel sorry for myself, and even get comfortable in the ditch and comfortable in people feeling sorry for me. Or I could gather my papers back up, get them in the basket, and get on down the road. Because of Euland, I always understood I would always have two choices. Just two. Linger in the ditch or move on down the road. My guest today found herself in a really deep ditch. Her young and vibrant husband passed away with brain cancer and left her with 4 children. Her ditch included unspeakable grief, confusion, uncertainty, and even thoughts that her family could end up homeless. She would tell you one day about 18 months after his death, she suddenly realized that she had two choices. She could wallow in self-pity and in her very trying circumstances, or she could make herself get out of the ditch, gather her stuff up, and begin to make another life. She did get out of the ditch. In doing so, she helped her children get out of the ditch. She also learned things about herself she could have never known if she had not made the decision to move forward. Not only did she get out of the ditch, but she took chances, or rather, large leaps of faith. And not only did she walk on down the road, but she began to soar. And so did her children. But my guest really soared. At some point, she began to believe she could fly. She believed she could touch the sky. She thought about it every night and day. She spread her wings and she would fly away. She believed she could soar. She ran through the open door. She believed she could fly. And my goodness, she did. This is Bruce Goddard, and thank you again for listening in on this podcast. I have an old friend with me. Her name is Christy Ray Horn, And Christy, I don't know when I met you. Do you have any idea what year we started going to church together years ago? Do you have a clue of when that was?
Hi, Bruce. I think it was 89, maybe.
Yeah, so that was a long time ago. Yeah, and you were,
Yeah.
so just so you know, Christy comes from a huge family. And Christy, just tell people how many siblings you have, and then I'll talk about what I think about your mom and dad in just a minute, which is obviously very positive. so,
Okay. Well, I have 7 siblings. I am number 2 in line out of 8. There's 8 of us kids. That's 5 girls, 3 boys. So I have 4 sisters, 3 brothers.
yeah, and they're all absolutely wonderful people. And her mom and dad are wonderful people, and I've known them for a lot of years. How they raised all those kids, and not only that, how they raised them, period, and kept them fed and everything you had to do with that many. That was a lot of rays running around. And the girls, by the way, well, every one of them cute as a button. But how they fed them and kept them fed, I don't know how I did my 3. And they got 8. And not only that, you all turned out wonderfully. That is absolutely a testament to your parents, for one thing. But it's also, I know you're a very tight-knit group. And I know people, if you're wondering what we're going to talk about, you hold on, because this lady has an incredible story. If you're a lady out there, you want to have both antennas come up, because you will be amazed at what Christy is doing in life right now, and compared to where she was just a few years ago. It's a real testimony, especially for women. So I remember coming to your wedding a long time ago, and you'd have to tell me what year that is, but you married Ollie Horn, who was a funny guy, full of personality. So tell me about how you met Ollie, and a little bit about your relationship.
Yes. So we got married in November of 1990. So we had met, basically he was working with the youth group at one church. I believe it was Byron United Methodist. And I was working with the youth group at my church, which was Benevolence. They had an area-wide, I guess, get together for all of the area churches. All the youth groups got together at Bluebird. And so I actually met him the first time at Bluebird. So that was our initial meeting.
And so you fell in love, he fell in love, and I remember it being a really big wedding. And then it wasn't long before you two started having kids, and you started raising your own family. So tell me about your kids. I know you're very proud of all of them, but you've got 4.
I have 3 boys and 1 girl. My oldest, PJ, he just graduated this past year with his engineering degree with a minor in aerospace engineering. And then my second, Benjamin, we call him Benny. He is an EMT at a big hospital in Atlanta. And he's also putting himself through school. He's working on a degree in neuroscience. So he's just finishing his first 4 years of school and working towards his medical degree. And then my third, Jordan, is a mechanic at a motorsports place. He loves it, loves working on motors and everything.
I'm not surprised at that at all.
And then my youngest is my girl. Her name is Promise, and she just graduated this past year, graduated high school, and she just started at Middle Georgia State University, and she is working on a nursing degree.
You've got this wonderful family. Ollie, at some point, although I know he was a pastor and he was a minister, but he became a flight attendant of all things. So tell me a little bit about how that happened.
Well, it's one of those things that was never on our radar. Ollie, when we first got married, for the first 8 years that we were married, Ollie was a police officer.
I forgot that. Yeah, I
And
remember that.
yeah, yeah. So he was a preacher's kid. His dad was a pastor, and he always helped at the church, and he would speak occasionally and everything. And it just kind of came about that he wound up, for years he helped at church. He wound up working as a children's pastor for years, and then slash whatever else was needed
Right.
around the church,
Right.
and our four kids were like the little church mice, that were always running around playing while mom and daddy were working on stuff. And so anyway, back in 2007, we actually went to Ukraine,
Oh, wow.
to help start a church over there. And we were thinking that we were going to be there for a couple of years, and so we came back from Ukraine. We were over there for about 6 months, and then they changed the laws. We had to come home in order to get a visa, because when we went over there, as long as you exited the country I believe it was every 6 months, you could stay. You had
Right.
we had to exit the country, get our passport stamped, but they changed the laws, and in order to stay in the country, you had to have a visa. So, which we did not have. So we came back to Georgia. We're planning to be here for, a month or two, whatever it took to get visas for our family. While we were home, that was when the economy crashed, kind of. It was all of a sudden.
That was 2008, probably.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
that was the fall. When we came back was the fall of 2007.
Yeah. Okay.
So we had several business owners that were providing support for us, to be over there for our ministry and all that. In 1 week, during the time that we were home, we heard from multiple people that were our supporters, and basically they were saying, "Look, I'm so sorry. Our business is struggling. We are not going to be able to support anymore." We were like, "You know what? We're not going to have the money to go back,
Right.
to do what we felt like we were supposed to do there." And so it was just a real shock to us, a real adjustment, because that had been our family plans for a couple of years.
Right.
We were going to be working on that. And so that just kind of, to give you the background, all of a sudden Ollie was looking for a job. He had trained the guy that replaced him at the church, and so it wasn't like we could just go say,
We'll be back. Yeah.
So he started looking for a job, and because of the economy, there just was nothing available. And he saw online that this airline out of Atlanta was hiring, and just kind of on a whim. I mean, he was online sending in resumes, and so he applied at this airline for the job of flight attendant, and wound up getting the job.
And I can see why he got it if they interviewed him. I mean, he was
Right,
full of
right.
personality. Yeah.
He was very much a people person, perfect for the job, really, because with his background as a police officer as well, he knew how to handle people,
Right.
and so they really liked him. They hired him, and he told me, "I'm just going to do this until something better comes along." Well, once he started flying, he wound up loving it.
Right.
To fast forward a little bit, he did wind up working some at the church, but he kept both jobs.
So I also
So
know that while he was a flight attendant, and this gets into the part that's tough, but I know
yeah,
he was somewhere in I don't remember, another country, wasn't he, when he fell out and they didn't know what was
yes,
wrong, and you were not there, and
he actually was in Lagos, Nigeria, and had seizures whenever they were getting ready to board the plane, and he wound up, they took him to the hospital there in Lagos, and he spent 5 days there in the hospital before they could determine what was wrong.
He was there, and you were here. You couldn't even, I guess, could you talk to him while he was in the hospital? Was he able to talk? I mean, he got over the incident and just trying to figure out what was wrong, and then it was a problem when they found out he had a tumor to fly him back. That's another issue, right?
Yes, yes. They did tests on him while he was in the hospital there, and they determined that he had a brain tumor, but they didn't know what it was.
Right. And you were probably concerned, I would think, that hospital, you wondered if they were up to date on, you in Nigeria. So
Right,
yeah.
right. I knew that it was a dangerous place to be, not safe in that area. And the hospital facility there they had to take him off the hospital facility to go run the test that they needed to do.
Wow. You had your hands tied. You were in the United States. He was there. It had to be frantic.
Right.
So
Yes.
finally he got back, and I know that then now you were dealing with something that you never intended, that you weren't going back to Ukraine, and
Right.
he found a job and he's loving it, and all of a sudden now you're faced with a brain tumor, which rocked your whole world, right?
Yes, yes. So this was in 2012. When they flew him home, checked him in at Emory. Emory did their own test, and they said, yes, he has a brain tumor, but we won't know what it is until we do surgery to remove it. So he had brain surgery. They said his tumor was the size of a lemon, and he had never had
Any
even
symptoms?
headache or
Right.
anything previously. After they removed it, when they called us with the pathology report, it was glioblastoma stage 4
Wow, yeah.
brain cancer. He went through treatments for 2 years. After that, it was radiation, chemo. He wound up having an infection after his first brain surgery, and so he had to have 2 more brain surgeries.
Mm.
And actually that was throughout 2012, and in 2013 he was slowly recovering. He began recovering and picking back up and healing, and we were just so encouraged that he was doing so well. So by the time of the fall of 2013, he actually went back to work. He was doing so well, and he began working at the church as well. And as a matter of fact, they had asked him to start pastoring at the church that we were at. But he had only been back at work for about 6 weeks, and his tumors started coming back. And then they were inoperable. The chemotherapy wouldn't do anything, that wouldn't touch him, and he passed away 6 months later.
I remember well that I think you sent me a Facebook message and to tell me, Bruce, and you probably didn't know if I even knew all that was going on, because you and I hadn't been in touch in years.
Right, right.
But I did know. I saw it.
Not seen you.
Yeah, you hadn't seen me, but you did. You sent me a message, said, I need help. Ollie is going down fast, and I have no idea what to do. You remember that?
Yes, I did. I had no clue, because we just were believing that he
was going to be well,
to be healed, and that everything was going to be okay. And because he had recovered so well from that first time, we were kind of expecting and hoping and praying for that to happen the second time, and it did not.
Right.
And he went downhill very fast, and it was just a shock then. So I had looked you up, and I thought, if I have to plan this, I don't know what I'm going to do. I have no clue. we had been so focused on his treatments and, the things that we were doing for his health and everything, that we never planned, never
Never even
had a
thought
clue.
about it. Yeah. I mean, most people
Right.
don't. Right.
So it was really difficult at that point
Oh, my.
to see that, to get to that point that I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I I have no clue. And so that was where you came in when, I called. Or I think I may have looked you up on Facebook. I
Yeah.
don't even know if I had your contact information
Probably didn't. Probably didn't.
because we had,
I hadn't seen you in years. Yeah, I remember.
yeah,
And so I remember getting you some help to get somebody there. And also, not long after that, when Ollie passed away, I just happened to be at home. It was one morning, which was rare for me. And I think Rhonda, your sister, called me and said that Ollie had just passed away. And I took off and drove out there. And I was at the house when the funeral home came. And I remember how gut-wrenching it was to be there. I hadn't seen you in years. But that was
yes.
very, very tough moment for you and all your kids, with everybody. It was just heartbreaking. I saw that. And so obviously, especially since then, I followed you on Facebook and all that kind of stuff. And then the next thing I know, I don't know how long it was afterwards, you're all of a sudden a flight attendant. So tell me did you just make the connections through Ollie, or how did you become a flight attendant?
In a way, yes, because we actually had talked about me becoming a flight attendant as well once the kids got older. And, maybe we'd get to fly together some. And, I knew that I wanted to do something once my kids got older. But at the time that he passed away, my daughter was 10. My youngest one was 10. My focus for the first year or two was to kind of keep things as normal as possible for the kids.
And I know a lot of people listening to this have been through the loss of a mate.
Yes.
I just happened to see this up close, and I've seen a lot of them up close, as you know. I know you had to figure out how in the heck what I do to make a living. What have I got to do? What am I going to do? I mean, I know you had to be in that situation.
Oh, yeah.
Your whole world had fallen apart, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, I honestly, I was lost.
Yeah.
I mean, half of me was gone. I mean, we had been married for 23 years. And I mean, it was like for the first year after he had passed away, like I would make decisions even based on what I thought his input would be. I mean, I was so used to, that other half being there, and the one that you bounce ideas off of, and the one that you get counsel from, and all of that. So it was pretty difficult, and I was just lost for the first, I don't know, 6 months to a year. It was 6 months before I would take his clothes out of the dresser. It just,
Right.
I just couldn't. And even at a year afterwards, I mean, and people were asking me like, so are you dating? And I said, no, I won't ever. I just can't.
Right.
And I don't know. It was about a year and a half after he passed away. I woke up one day, and honestly, it was like flipping a switch. And it was, you know what? He died, but I didn't. And I have to get on with my life.
You got to keep living.
So it did take, it did take me quite a while.
And it takes everybody quite a while, and most people more than quite a while it took you. At that point, you got two choices. You can lie in the ditch, or you can get up and pick up your stuff and move on, right? And you had to choose to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
After he passed away, though, one of my biggest fears was that I did not want my children to feel in any way that was a crutch, or that was, I didn't want them to feel victims.
Right.
And I had to remind myself too, there were words that described me that I never thought would describe me. All of a sudden I was a widow. All of a sudden I was a single mom. All of a sudden I was jobless. And, and it never got to that point, but I was like, I didn't know if I would be homeless. I gathered the kids around on the day of his funeral, and I said, we are going to be so thankful for the time that we had him. And I wanted them to look on what they had received and not concentrate on what had been taken away. And that sometimes that was only in words and not so much in feelings, So it was difficult, but time helps. And a friend one time, she who had lost her husband, she told me, Christy, just keep breathing. Yeah. Just keep breathing. And I realized, what she was saying, because there's nothing that can make it better. I mean, there's, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of things.
The other thing, there's nothing somebody can say to you to make it better.
Exactly.
So did you find that people that had been through that, you mentioned your friend that had lost her husband, when that person walks in the room, your antenna goes up a little bit, right? Because
right.
They have survived that. These other people don't know what the heck they're talking about. This person knows what I'm going through, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, I believe that sometimes that's why God allows stuff in our lives so that we can kind of be there for others when they're going through the same situation. And we know exactly. So whenever I went through that, people would come offer me their words of encouragement and help and support. And it all meant a lot to me. But when it came from somebody who had been through it,
you're listening with
right.
both ears, right?
Exactly.
And I'm sure you're now in a place that when something happens to a friend of yours or anybody loses a husband, you probably have a tendency to go to them. Let's fast forward it. So you've had you've been traveling all over everywhere as a flight attendant. I see you laying on the beach in Florida or somewhere in Seattle or wherever in the heck you are. You enjoying life, right?
2 years after Ollie had passed away, I applied at the same airline and got a job as a flight attendant and went on with our plans.
That you had planned all along.
Way.
Yeah.
Yes. And so now I am working full time as a flight attendant, go all over the place. Most of the time domestically, I have done international trips, and I can do international trips, but Promise is 18 now. So, I feel a little better about going further away. But for a while, I would do domestic just because I felt like if anything happened with the kids, I wanted to be able to get back to them.
And you got family close by also, right? Yeah. That big group of siblings you got came in handy, right?
Right.
Yeah, I knew that. So your horizons have been expanded big time that you never thought. I mean, there's no telling how many people you've met. You have a whole new life.
Right.
You're traveling everywhere. You're meeting people. You're going to places you never would have gone to. My mental picture in your house the day he died, and I was standing there, to what you're doing now, I think Ollie is looking down and smiling. And he's saying, way to go, Christy. Isn't he? I mean, don't you believe that? I mean,
I hope so, yes.
I mean, yes. I have no doubt he's doing that. Here you are, you're a successful flight attendant. Now I'm looking around, and I'm seeing you starting to fly airplanes. So you got to tell me how you did that. So let me just say this about Christy that I've noticed. She can fix anything. Well, I think you were putting a pool in at your house, and you were putting the concrete and stuff in. Weren't you building the stuff? Didn't you do it yourself?
I put in a brick patio and fire pit beside the pool. Yeah. Huh?
But you did it yourself, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Her whole family, her dad taught these kids to do everything. I mean, they can work with the hands. You heard one of our sons is an engineer. I'm not surprised. Your dad's an engineer, right? Isn't that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they can fix anything. They can do anything. So when she's all of a sudden flying airplanes, so just tell me how that came about, and I really want to know where it's going, because I think it's probably there's no telling.
After I started flying as a flight attendant, working as a flight attendant, it's a federal, regulation that 2 crew members be in the flight deck at all times. And so in the cases when one of our pilots has to come out to use the restroom, then one of us is required to go into the flight deck until, they return. And so I'll go sit up there and ask questions and, look out the window and everything. And I was like, oh, this is pretty cool, and I got to talking to some of our pilots, and they were like, well, you should go do a discovery flight sometime and see if it interests you. And I'm like, ha ha ha, yeah, I just kind of laughed it off. And I kept asking questions and stuff. And then I met one of our pilots that used to be a flight attendant. And I said, wait a minute, you can actually go from flight attendant to pilot? And she said, yeah. She said, now it's a lot of work, but my antenna went up then, and I was like, I think I want to check this out. The more I thought about it, I was like, well, this would be such a big endeavor to take on. I don't know if I should do this. One of the requirements at my airline at that time was that you have a 4-year degree. And I had no degree. However, I did go do a discovery flight. So went to the school that I'm at now and went up for an hour with an instructor. And I was like, I think I want to do this. I began to consider what it would take. I had several things against me. Number one, my age. I'm 53. I took my discovery flight in 2017. However, at the same time, I was talking to one of my daughter's counselors, and I said, I want to do this, but I said, but I will be super busy. So, and I don't want it to be detrimental to her. And she said, well, it's not that you shouldn't do it, but she said, I would recommend that you wait until she's 16, because that way she's not waiting on you to come pick her up, take her somewhere. I agreed with her, and I waited. And the month that my daughter turned 16, I went and applied at the college.
Is your goal to be a commercial air pilot? Is that what you're trying to do?
Yes.
And how long does that take, Christy?
It takes years.
Yeah.
Years and years.
Yeah.
It's a lot of time building. I have my private pilot license now, and I am at the end of this semester, I'll be a junior at the school.
So how long did it take you when you started to get your private pilot's license?
It was between 1 and 2 years.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, I have to say too, though, that during that time, there were several times that it was months between my lessons, because at the university, when COVID hit.
Right. That slowed you down. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And so it's just been an uphill climb. But honestly, when I first started, the first semester was extremely difficult because it was a summer semester. There was a lot going on that summer. I almost quit after the first semester. But I found an advisor that helped me sit down. I said, please help me sit down and figure this out. I need to figure out how I can take enough classes without being overwhelmed. So she helped me figure out which classes I needed to take and how to do first session, second session classes, all that. And so I started then. That was in 2019. Like I said, at the end of this semester, I will be a junior. So I'm working on a bachelor's degree in aviation science and management with flight track. So working on my certificates and my ratings. So
wow.
I have my private pilot certificate now, and I'm working on my instrument. So I've been flying doing that, and also doing a lot of sim work, sim lessons.
What's sim? What is that?
The flight simulator.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So your goal is to still be a commercial pilot.
It's still gonna be several years.
Yeah, that's okay.
It takes a long time.
I want whoever's flying a plane when I'm on it to be sure they know how to do it. I can tell you
Exactly. Yeah, most people do.
Yeah, I guarantee you.
Yeah, so it takes years of building enough hours. And the thing is, once you have built enough hours and you have all your ratings and everything, then you go to a regional carrier first.
Right.
And then you have to build your hours there before you can go to a major.
I've been on a lot of regional jets, so you're saying I wasn't as safe on the regional jet as I was on the big one?
Right.
That's a scary thought.
No, they have lots of hours too.
Yeah,
so.
I know, I'm kidding. It's amazing because I knew you as a little girl. I'm 14 or 15 years older than you, and this huge family. I saw, amazing family. I mean, all of these people, you folks, you got to understand, these girls, I'm looking at Christy, she's drop dead gorgeous. All these girls are beautiful, just incredible family. And they have gone through what Christy's gone through, from that devastation to deciding that she had to go on with life. And not only that, but she was thinking, will she be homeless? Her kids are educated, college educated, or in college, or they're all doing great. Right. And here she is having a blast being a flight attendant, but now also flying planes. She flies these private planes all the time. I see it on social media, so I know you're flying all the time. I'm sure you got to get hours doing that. What an incredible story for any woman listening to this. I mean, I knew I had to get you on here, Christy, because I just don't think there's many people that move on with life the way you've done it. And by the way, make your husband, if he can see you from heaven, and I think he can, you're making him smile, and you're making him very proud. And whatever else you do in life, and whatever you do with marriage, future, whatever it is, you have done well. If you had to tell people out there, and especially ladies that are struggling and wondering, how in the heck am I going to get by? You did more than get by. I mean, you've been stepping some big steps. So what's your advice to people?
I have a strong faith, and my faith in God is what gets me by. I mean, and I know that even if I don't know what's going on, He does. And that goes back to my family too. I mean, they raised us in church and taught us the way, and taught us each how to have our own personal relationship with God. I just had to realize that I could rely on Him, and that I could, when I started looking at this, I thought, oh, this will be such a big endeavor. And I said, you know what, God, if you open the door, I'll walk through it, and I will give it my best shot. I honestly thought that when I applied at the college, I was like, who knows if I'll even pass the entrance exam.
Right. A lot of people don't. You got to have some skills to even get in that school. A lot of people want to be pilots that don't have the temperament or whatever it takes to be a pilot. So that's something right there.
I have loved the challenge of it. Any day that I get to fly is a good day.
I don't know how you do. How many days a week do you work as a flight attendant? How often you have to go out?
It just varies. It's anywhere from 3 to 6.
Yeah, okay. So you're
So,
working a lot. Well, I'm gonna tell you,
right.
Christy, you've got an incredible story, and I can't wait to see where it goes. You're in the middle of it, and it's not over. So
Well,
who
thank
who
you.
knows what's going to happen? But
Yeah,
your
yeah.
your story has to inspire other people. And I knew, and I know you're a person of faith, and I know that what you said, they're not just words. You've lived that all your life, and you had to trust God when Ollie passed away. You had to trust
Yeah.
God with your family when he was not there, and you can certainly
Right.
trust God.
The words that described me at one point, single mom, widowed, they described me, but it was up to me if I let it define me. Meaning, I didn't want to, I guess, be a victim in that situation. I didn't want people to look at me and feel sorry for me. I didn't want people to look at my kids and feel sorry for my kid. I didn't want my kids to feel sorry for themselves. There's a grieving process, and that's not what I'm talking about. But I'm talking about moving forward in life and using the things that come against you and those trials and things that you go through, keeping your head up and moving on and being thankful for the good things. And I really believe that a positive attitude will get you through a lot. So it was a positive attitude and faith in God that has gotten me and my kids through all this, and I'm super proud of every one of my kids.
I know they're super proud of their mom.
I hope so. God has brought us this far, and he'll carry us through.
A few months after this episode was released in April 2022, Christy was diagnosed with a little cancer of her own. As you can imagine, after what her kids had gone through with the loss of their dad, she really did not even want to tell them, but she did. Christy had surgery and then had to undergo a year of immunotherapy transfusions. The good news is she's fine today. Although this development caused her to pause her flight instrument rating track for a short time, she was back to work as a flight attendant in short order after allowing her surgery to heal. Christy is currently in her senior year in pursuit of her aviation science degree to eventually become a commercial pilot. Her son, Benny, she talked about, who was a first responder during the pandemic, is now in medical school, and just last weekend was awarded his white jacket as he moves from the classroom to his clinical training. Her daughter, Promise, is now in college and is on her journey to become a registered nurse. Her other two sons, Paul and Jordan, are doing fine and making a difference in their worlds. As the Bible says, with the Lord, a day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years are like a day. Ollie Horn passed away on April the 8th, 2014. According to my calculations, that has been about 9.5 years here. But from Ollie's perspective in heaven, it's been less than 15 minutes. A lot has happened with his family in those 15 minutes. I know he is smiling big time and very proud as he watches it all unfold from above and as he begins to check out his mansion.
Viewing life from a hearse, it could be worse. Laugh, think, and cry with the country undertaker.